All right, hello everyone, and welcome. It is Tuesday, December 11th. We have entered the home stretch here in week 4. You have now composed the music and created the sound design for both Angry Bots and 2D Platformer. Last week, you took the opportunity to use Wise to get the music and sound effects working in the game. And I didn't receive. Well, I received a couple of emails of issues that might have popped up, and I'm either have addressed them or in the process of addressing them or responding. But if you are continuing to have any issues with Wise for either 2D platformer or Angry Bots as you progress through this week, please let me know. For those here in the live class in the chat, did you have any issues with Wise for either project? Did you get everything working? Was the music and sound effects successful? Did you have any issues or things? Often, once you get to this point, um, you've been reading through the assignments and we've been watching the videos and talking about it in class. And it's a really educated guess up to the point when you put the music and sound effects into Wise, and then it's kind of the big reveal, and you see how everything is set up, and so and how it all plays back, and whether your guess was correct and your approach overall, and then you might find the need to change some sounds or to tweak things or to change levels overall, but once you get everything working, then you really get a sense of the full project. And um, then, of course, at that point, it would reveal some issues, whether it completely doesn't work, or one or two sounds don't work for some reason, or it's giving you an error, or there's all sorts of technical sorts of things that can pop up. So we want to make sure that we address anything through this week because of course this is the last week of class, in the last week of the month, right before the holiday break. So I'm sure that you and both myself are ready for that break, and we want to get everything taken care of before we go off to that. So let's make sure we can address anything, any sort of troubleshooting throughout the month. So here in the chat, smooth sailing. I do certainly need to do some fine tuning to the levels, but I think that's it. The Angry Bots has a few points where it runs the music start event and causes it to loop over itself. Putting the stop command at the beginning of the playlist didn't work for me until I changed the scope to global. Now it's all good. Absolutely. So what you might, this is for everybody, what you might encounter is music works just fine first time through. You get to the end, like you beat the whole game, and it restarts at that point, just kind of drops you back in the beginning. But at that second time through, it could double the music. And what is happening is when the game starts, it starts to play the music. You go all the way through, it gets to the end, but it never tells it to stop playing the music at the end there. So when it starts over again, it continues to play the previous music plus starts a new music soundtrack. So the best thing to do is put a stop at the play, right, and before the play event in Play Music System start. So right before you start everything, you quickly stop anything that might be playing. And for the most part, this wouldn't be an issue until you start playing through the game a couple of times. And then switching it to global, uh, if you don't switch all of these of different actions to global, then it will cause all sorts of weird playback in the music because different things are trying to trigger different parts of the music. And by setting everything to global all the way across, it gets a little bit beyond what we talk about in the class. But just in general, if you set everything to global, it considers the music soundtrack effectively like one version of it. There is only one music soundtrack, and it doesn't matter how many spider bots I run into, it's only going to play that one spider action cue. so that it doesn't try to trigger 6 versions of it on the 6 different robots that I encounter. Again, it gets a little beyond the scope, but it's definitely something that you recognize through troubleshooting, trial and error, those sorts of things. So excellent that it kind of popped up and that you figured out a way to make it all work. And those are the types of things that we certainly like to address throughout this week. Whether you just notice a really small weird thing in its playback or with something with your music, or if it's like catastrophic failure, nothing is working at all. So we want to make sure all of that stuff is wrapped up by the end of this week and the end of the month as a whole. So the focus here in our last week, there's no brand new composition because we don't have a week 5 for peer review and grading and all that sort of stuff, and another project or anything like that. So it kind of lightens up a bit, but it is kind of wrapping everything up from the all the projects and everything that you've been working on throughout the course of the month. So we are going to now, at this point, or relatively soon, after some troubleshooting, you will have both Angry Bots and 2D Platformer functioning correctly with your music and sound effects, playing back properly with an appropriate mix, and you'll have something to show off. You'll have the means to show off your music and sound effects that you've created for these games. And those applications are for you. They are for you to distribute and to share, to show off your work, add to a demo reel or portfolio. You can zip them up and put them on Dropbox or Google Drive, or host them on your website and share them off to clients or future maybe employers. But there are a bit of limitations with just having the game application. And the main thing is it's a Mac application, and you need to be able to, or somebody needs to have a Mac in order to play it and check it out. Another good reason is a lot of very smart people don't just randomly download applications off the internet and play them on their computer, especially in a company where they might have some sort of corporate filter in IT that prevents them from downloading anything. So you are this week going to create a video that shows off you playing the game and your music and sound effects working in the game. So you will create a 2-minute long video capture of your music and sound effects working. And the assignment in the archive discusses how you can go ahead and create this process and work through this. It goes through all of the steps to capture both the music and the audio. And ultimately, you will submit the video. You will upload it to YouTube, share a link, and for the purposes of the class, and of course beyond the class, it's a whole lot easier to share the link. And more than likely, most people have no problem with just clicking on a link and watching a video on YouTube, or sharing the video around. It's a whole lot better than like uploading an 800 megabyte video file and using it as an attachment, and having all sorts of troubles in actually distributing the work that you've done. And as you might have discovered and sort of realized that when talking about music for games, just taking your 3 main loops and uploading them to SoundCloud and saying, hey, these are 3 loops for this game, and kind of having a screenshot, doesn't really give the full picture of your music, your intros, your main loops, your endings, all playing back with your sound effects, with the interactivity of somebody actually clicking around and playing the game, having fun, the graphics. It kind of, the game makes your music sound better, and your music makes the game more fun. So it all kind of works together, and you need to have the best sort of vehicle to show that off. And you have the game, and you also create a video representation of that, that you can ultimately hold on to and distribute. So we'll be wrapping up the games, and by this point, with the final video and with the final project working, it'll show that you have created all of the music for both projects. created all of the sound effects. We had the opportunity to do peer review and revisions throughout the month. So you submitted it, we could talk about it. You also got a video feedback in the grading, and you have the opportunity to revise the music all the way throughout the month. Then you took your music and sound effects, you put it into the game, you got it working, you used Wise to get everything set up and working. Get into the game, test it out, realize maybe, hey, I need to make some tweaks, I need to make some changes, kind of go back again, go back into Logic or your DAW, fix and update the music and sound effects, bounce them out again, put them back in the game, check it all out, make sure it all works, test it, and then once you have a working version of the game, now you're going to create a video to actually show off the work that you've done. And the video alone, beyond just the content of that video, kind of shows that you've gone through this entire process to make sure that the music is actually functioning and playing back. And if somebody wants to check it out further, then you also have the actual game. It is a Mac game, and it's a zip file, and they could, once they know a bit more about the project, then maybe they'd feel a bit more comfortable with just downloading the application and checking it out. So, and this is very much the same sort of process that I go through in a professional sense all the time, where I talk to the client, figure out what they want, sort of mock it up and compose it and send them some ideas from just bounced straight music out of the DAW. Once I get a general thumbs up, then I start creating it and bouncing it and formatting it for whatever it needs in the game. Then I use a tool like Wise to set it up in the game, test it out, make any tweaks, make any changes, and ultimately create a video capture that I can show back to the client to say, hey, this is what it is, this is what it's going to do, and once you put it into the game, then this is what to expect. And then ultimately I can send all this stuff off to them, they can put it into the game, and it should match exactly what they saw. So very much to the sort of process overall. Wanted to kind of one of the main purposes of the class throughout the month is to show you this process, show you how music and sound effects are working in games, and then in this final week talk about how you can take all of the knowledge and the projects that you've worked on and apply it beyond the class. So if you have an interest in working on games, then here's a whole bunch of resources that you can apply and work on beyond the class. To kind of hopefully get you introduced and get you started in the games side of the music industry. Or the music side of the games industry. One or the other. So that's sort of what the direction of this week is. Reach out if you have any questions. Make sure that we get everything kind of wrapped up for the end of the month. And so right now, we will take a listen to some of the chiptune submissions that we had. We had a good number this week. Where did that go? Right here we have 7 submissions from the chiptune assignment. And we will take a listen to these. I'm just going to go through and play the MP3 files and bring up the screenshot. And what I always like to do and would encourage on your side is sort of imagine what type of game you might be playing while you're listening to these, and I'll offer my version of that, which and we can also see sometimes if it matches whatever the composer's version of it was, just to see if it sort of matches a certain idea or type of game that it might imply overall. And so with this assignment, so we're working in Wise this week, or sorry, last week. In week 3, we were talking mostly about technology and the tools and where game and music, game audio and music is in 2018. And to give you a sense of how far we've come, we give you a composition that utilizes the restrictions of the original Nintendo system, kind of going all the way back to the dawn of game audio, or the sort of pinnacle of that era, There were certainly game consoles before it, but the Nintendo kind of the NES sort of represents the um, the last of that era where everything was synthesized directly, everything was very basic and simple waveforms. And so you were provided that palette and those restrictions. You were given a logic session that had 4 EXS24 samplers, that you had access to a couple of different sound banks with samples from the original Nintendo and Famicom system, very simple waveforms, and then tasked with creating a composition in that particular style, utilizing those sounds. You could have then you had to work against the restrictions. So the restricted sound palette, the restricted number of tracks. So you had you could have actually an infinite or as many tracks as you wanted, but only 4 voices could play at any one time. That was the main restriction of the original Nintendo. You had 2 square waves, a triangle wave, and a noise channel. So you could change the sounds and the tones pretty much note to note, but you could only use 4 voices at any one time. So those are the 2 main restrictions. Use the sounds provided and 4 voices at any one time. Some of the restrictions that we did not follow are you can polyphony. You can use chords. The original Nintendo was monophonic in that each voice could only play 1 note at a time, along with the fact that it was mono. But each channel was only 1 note at a time. It did not have polyphony. But that's one part that we don't follow. We allow chords. And drums count as 1 channel. So even if you hit a kick and a snare at the same time, okay, we'll count that as 1. You're also provided effects. You had an EQ to represent kind of a filter, delay, compressor, because you could do all sorts of volume effects, and reverb. Of course, it was Space Designer and not anywhere near the kind of fake reverb techniques that they could use, but we didn't stick with the basics overall. So somewhat in the domain gets us a great kind of sound. Some people love this assignment because of the nostalgia and the types of sounds, and it really allows folks to just get into the composition. One thing that I often find with the chiptune is folks just sit trying to find the correct preset. One issue that I find with just general composition, not this assignment, is that people will just get lost in the sea of presets and patches and options that are available in even just Logic, and then kind of write the music around the preset that they chose. Versus here in the chiptune composition, the sounds are so sort of basic that it really leans heavily into harmony and melodic composition and development, and typically a kind of a faster, more up tempo kind of pacing overall. Didn't have to loop, it was just linear overall, but had to maintain the restrictions. So that's a general overview of the direction of this. Yeah, let's go ahead. Let me see if we'll make sure to talk about this. One way to kind of boost the project a bit further beyond the original composition at the end. So we'll talk about that. But let's go ahead and load up the first one here. Load this in QuickTime and see if I can make the screenshot fit. There we go. All right. Start this over and check it out. here in the chat, Super Ghouls and Goblins, as a suggestion for the type or feel of that game. Definitely, it feels kind of very dark and an adventure sort of sound overall. Has that sort of marching feel from the drums. So very good use of melody and harmonic development, kind of supporting the lines. So we have this sort of ostinato feel as it repeats, and then we have the strong melody that comes in here and plays throughout, and has a very sort of memorable line. This was what the sort of original Nintendo and all these early game systems were really good at. They were repetitive as heck because they were limited, couldn't have just hours and hours of music, and the limit of the number of voices meant that you had to have really strong melodic, memorable leads. You couldn't rely on just amazing production, and so it ends up creating just through the repetition and the sort of lyrical melodic element of a lot of the soundtracks, creates the sort of just long-standing memories that we have of some of these game themes. So the only thing might be, I like where you start changing the progression, but through here, the repetition of kind of the phrasing of the arpeggio through the second half, and then the drums too. I think it's when it drops out here and then you bring the line back in and repeat it. It starts getting a bit repetitive in the sort of, I guess, is that a bass line? Or just sort of harmonic line and drums. So, but overall, I think it works out very well. I would definitely put it in an adventure kind of game. Maybe like a side-scrolling platformer. All right. Very good. Let's open this up. Open that up. And here we go. Ooh, slowing down. It's like my vehicle's running out of energy in the game. Cool. I like the effect at the end. Main thing is the repetition all the way through. When you got to this part, I was like, cool. But then it just sort of repeats all the way through, and then it got to the change. I was like, cool. But then after just a couple of passes of that, and then again, the changes are nice, but the repetition of the changes needs development and just needs some change. So if you could create, let's see, let's go back here. Right, so just go through that like 4 times and then change it up. 2, 3, 4, and then just slide it up. And if you work on, like, you can maintain that sort of 4-note phrase, but shift it up, like parallel thirds and fifths and modulations of thirds and fifths often works very well for this type of music. Especially, I think you did it over here with the lower bass. Well, it slows down. But when it was faster, that kind of faster repeating phrase, working with arpeggiators that are sped up to 16th, 32nd, 64th notes, and that are moving through, sweeping through chords, is really sort of typical of these types of sounds. So, and then when you get to all of this stuff at the end, even the little tag, it's almost using the music as a sound effect, using it to describe what's going on. So things are slowing down, so I guess I'm running out of energy, or I'm losing health, or something bad is happening, probably, or I'm not in action and I'm kind of calming down a bit. And then even at the very, very end, whatever that was, right, something happens here. And you're sort of mimicking that through the music. So I would like, it would be great to have this kind of interest and change happening all the way through. So run through something about 4 times and then move on to another idea and then kind of shift it and change it. And I think, yeah, we got some good stuff happening in there. Oh, let's see. What kind of game? Oh, when I hear this sort of kind of falling 4-note phrase, and then this sort of thing, these kind of sound like alarms, like bad things are happening. And then you hear, well, let's slow it down. Let's get back to the kind of the faster phrase here. I always feel like, what is it? Where in Sonic the Hedgehog, you're underwater and you're running out of air, or a lot of games do this, where things speed up. It's like do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do, like a timer is running out or something. I kind of get that sort of feel, like, oh no, you better hurry up. Yeah, some sense of urgency. Yeah, exactly. Like, oh no, something bad's about to happen. So, yeah, and then here, something bad did happen and everything slowed down. And yeah, those sorts of ideas where you're sort of mimicking even action that does, like, for a game that doesn't really exist, but you're mimicking those sorts of things that were happening in the game, works kind of well for, very well for these types of compositions. All right, open that, and look at all this. Look at this fun stuff. Shrink it down here. And I always get this with preview. Get the right size. Just, there we go. Somewhere we can see everything. All right, let's give this one a try. Comes. Nice. Very, very fun. All right. So, not too much to complain about on that one. That's for sure. Very, very well done. Was that all hand entered and programmed? Did you, how what was the overall approach? I mean, it sounds like you sort of mapped out your overall progression and then worked. There's a lot of, let's do this. Zoom. All this stuff. This is the fun stuff. Oh, come on. Where's my hand to move? Or whatever. But yeah, all of this fun stuff over here where it's all moving and sort of dancing around. Looks like a lot of fun work. So I would assume that you got most of the progression sort of mapped out, maybe a lead mapped out, and then started doing some of the fun sort of choppy stuff in there. A little bit of copy and pasting with arpeggios. Exactly. So again, that sort of really fast movement. Let's bring it back. Let's hear it again. All right, so definitely that sort of preparation. You ever work with sort of chiptune type of compositions before? The pacing, right? Working at that really sort of, what tempo are you at? Let's just say up here. 130. No, 90, sorry. So what are you at, like 90, 180 overall? Kind of feels like. And then the changes and these big sweeps. Where are those sweeps? Are we using, all right, 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah. Nice. And I love this, the changes, like the switching back and forth. Like all this stuff. Kind of dancing back and forth between those, dancing back between those two voices works very well. And then like switching between the octaves. Any inspiration? I don't know. Let's see. I'm thinking maybe like either a Contra kind of game or like because of the kind of marching snare in the beginning, or like I want to say Gradius, or like I'm in a spaceship, like a little spaceship flying around, and I'm zapping bad guys or aliens or whatever. So I don't know if there was a particular sort of inspiration. But nice work overall. Definitely a lot of fun. So have some, not only the composition, but the production of the composition, which states that it's not the tools, it's not the sounds. I mean, this would sound equally amazing in all sorts of Mega Man. Exactly. Mega Man would definitely be a match for this sort of kind of sci-fi action, fast-paced kind of, yeah, works out very well. So this is the sort of the point that I was thinking about earlier. One way that you can choose to take these compositions in another direction is to show the gamut of your productions between limitations and restrictions, and the like a full sound palette and no restrictions. So one of the big challenges of this composition is the restrictions, the limited sound palette, and the only 4 simultaneous voices. But a piece of music like this shows that even though those are the restrictions, and it doesn't mean that you can't have really solid compositions overall that sort of fit what their the kind of aesthetic that they're going for, and the whole sort of library and soundtrack of Nintendo era games sort of prove that even with those limited sound sets, you can still create some amazing music. And then what you might show, what might be something positive to show in a demo is, here is my composition with these restrictions and these limitations, and at some point taking the composition and moving into no restrictions, where you have a full sound palette and a full variety of sounds, whether it goes into orchestral or more of a more modern sort of different electronic style, and show that you can shift between the different elements. If the project had no money in the world and we were restricted all the way back to the original Nintendo, then here's awesome music. And even without those restrictions, or and sometimes I would say a composition like this benefits from its restrictions. But then saying, and then without the handcuffs, here's where it can go, and here's how it sounds. If we went to just full sound palette or even orchestral sort of stuff. So I don't know that this particular composition would even benefit from that sort of thing, but overall, it's a great way of creating just another sort of step to the demo, to say like, and another thing that I often suggest is don't just show the music, show how you did it. And if you wanted to, you could, you have a video of the music playing, but there's 30 seconds ahead of time. Half of the interest is looking at the screenshot and seeing how, at least for us, for audio folks and for people that you might be wanting to work with, showing you how you did it beyond, like, if you just sent that as a SoundCloud to link to somebody, then it's like, oh, that's really awesome. And then you say, oh yeah, it was also these limitations, and I only use 4 channels, and these are the sounds. Like, wow, that's even a step beyond overall. So, very, very cool. Nice composition. You have definitely utilized the tools in the appropriate way. Yeah. How long did that take? Was there a lot of chopping and moving and making it all fit? You said you worked with some arpeggios or arpeggiators and then kind of edited them, copied and pasted them together. Very cool. All right, let me get the next one set up here. And I also need to plug in my laptop because it's about to turn off on me. I did not plug it in beforehand. Okay. Let's... It is. I think I have my power supply. Hold on a sec. Turn myself back on. Just noticing the panning as it's going back and forth. Here in the chat, thinking of adventure, sort of a space-like sound, or maybe a sim game like the old Facebook games where you plant and harvest stuff. I could actually see that. And I was thinking, there's a section where it goes tink, tink. There's some snare or something. Where is it? Where is it? That one. Tink, tink, tink. I was thinking of like a alien mine or something like that, where maybe they go harvest some, I don't know, alien gems or something. So lots of dissonance, which could definitely work for a very unsettling sort of feel for. Very much depends on the aesthetic that you're going for, but the sort of repetition and it kind of goes back and forth between the different chords, creates more of that. Like I'm doing something, I'm building something, or I'm sort of planting and harvesting. That sort of repeating feel for those types of games. The only one thing with dissonance that I typically suggest is to have sections without dissonance, so that has consonants, very intentionally, to show that the dissonance is purposeful. To say, yes, I am playing over in dissonance over here, and you don't even know how dissonant or unrelated it is or is not unless you have some consonants in there. So, and it also can play against the idea that if this is a foreign place, well, I'm still the hero that I know, so maybe there's a section that represents some sort of normalcy that's way more consonant, and then it gets off to the creepy, weird dissonance and kind of goes back and forth. So I typically, when I hear something that's completely dissonant all the way through, often suggest some sort of consonants in there to show the contrast. All right, so alien mining game. Very cool. All right, next one here. Screenshot. Oh, come on, fit. All right, next. Cool. All right, so here in the chat we got some good one. Makes me think of wandering through ancient ruins. Tetris has sort of a mystical sound, especially at the end. So I definitely agree. It's that sort of exotic minor second tonality in there that works pretty well overall. Like the repeating sort of phrasing, sort of two phrases sort of working against each other. Do 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 do. There's one that's others. Another one. Do do bo ba bo ba. And then each phrase ends with da 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 da. That sort of phrasing overall. So, and then moves and shifts at different times. You can see we got rhythm, melody, filter, something like that. But you can see everything kind of alternating back and forth between these different phrases. I would definitely agree. Some sort of far-off mystical land, and sort of a covered in sand dunes and with ancient creatures of lore and all of these fun, interesting things. So creeping around in the ruins, you could definitely see that. Some sort of like sand level in a game kind of thing. The only thing that I would like to hear is you're very much on the quarter note all the way through. Dot, 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 dot. The only time it kind of strays is da, 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 dot, dot. That little tiny phrase. So if you had, as you alternate sort of between different sections, at some point, if it went to eighth notes, probably shouldn't go down to half notes or any slower. But yeah, just work on that sort of subdivide of the rhythm, move between eighth notes and quarter notes, and maybe even a little bit of that sort of swing to it. So just to get it off of just that straight quarter note feel all the way through. But yeah, I think it works very well, especially even in that repeating sort of phrasing as the background to a particular level in a game, because you don't need something that is jumping up and down for attention all the way through, especially if it's like a level piece of music, like a level loop. All right, very cool. All right, we went from alien mines to exotic sand level. Where are we going? What's next? All right. Music. So here in the chat, maybe Skate or Die, man. I used to love Skate or Die. That was a great game. Paperboy does make me think of some sort of city or urban setting. Yeah, I definitely, it's that strong kind of groove and the bass line, I think works very well. I think I remember seeing in the feedback on FSO, like the discussion post, like it mentioned, makes him feel like a 80s, getting in your 80s car and driving through, and sort of this neon city filled kind of scene. The main thing that I'm hearing is like a spy hunter kind of game where I'm driving a car and I'm shooting out, I don't know, bombs out the back and oil slicks and all that fun stuff. Some sort of driving game, definitely. Um, uh, and again, talking, I mentioned in the previous composition, maybe moving to something. So here you're kind of on its eighth note feel, but it does sort of stay there. So every once in a while, if you could maybe do something that kind of pushes the pacing, where it kind of goes almost to a double, or it goes to a double time feel for a certain point. Almost like I got maybe even like a turbo boost. So for a certain section, I get a power up, and what does that sound like? Those sorts of like ride the changes that might happen in a game. But I definitely feel the driving element of it, driving through the city, neon lights kind of vibe overall. So like the changes, like the groove, I like that bass. Dun dun, bom 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 bom. It definitely kind of makes my head bop as I'm driving along. That sort of feel. All right, let's see. What was cool? All right, yeah. Just and maybe introduce some of those changes that might reflect some of the changes in the gameplay. That does lead me to comment on the sort of arrangement of the music, where there's different sort of thoughts and approach, like how you want to position the music, where sometimes I'll hear compositions, since this is a linear composition, it doesn't have to do all the changes and things that you were doing with Angry Bots and 2D platformer. It's one linear composition, 2 minutes long, very much like a traditional approach to music. And so where was I going with this? I just lost my train. Hold on. How you arrange the music. There we go. I hear some sort of approach where it is like a song form, where you get things like verse, chorus, AABA sort of approach. And that doesn't necessarily work for this type of demo, right? It's not a song. It's not going to have lyrics. And then the other approach is, well, it's in a game, so let's make it loop and let's set it up so it's appropriate to a game. However, since it is a linear piece of music, somebody could very easily listen to this as a link on SoundCloud or just kind of host it on a website. So you do want to have some structure to it. So if you can relate the story of the game through the music, like paint a picture in your head as to the music. I'm sure as you were composing it, you were sort of inspired by a type of game or an overall approach. And so think about, what does getting ready for action sound like? What does the actual combat sound like? What does power up sound like? What does stealth sound like? What does winning and losing sound like? And if you can sort of tell that story, like we heard in one of them, there was that sort of marching snare to build up, and then it went into this sort of faster pace overall. And so you could say, here's what combat sounds like, and then we had the one that sounded like a timer was running out, or like you're drowning or something like that. And so like that sense of urgency, oh no, something's about to happen, and then, oh yay, you won. So it goes into this heroic feel, or oh no, here comes the bad guy, and here's the enemy theme, and sort of take the overall, again, aesthetic of what you're going for. This is an alien mine. This is the mystic temples and all that sort of stuff. And but craft it around those sorts of kind of scene changes. Then it tells the story in the music, and a lot of that stuff can there's a lot of tropes out there that you can pull from with these type of music and this sort of approach. So just again another way of thinking about how to position these types of compositions. All right, we got one more here. Let's bring this up. Oops. Come on now. Very, very cool. Okay. So here in the chat, I sort of did that with mine. The slow opening was the title theme, and then the fast segment was more of the action scene or level. Absolutely. You kind of tell the story through the composition overall. And then also the compound meter has me thinking of an underwater level. Absolutely. Anytime you get that sort of waltz in there, then it immediately kind of triggers the water level theme because of it's probably of Super Mario Brothers overall. It's been commonly used very well. The other thing I think is like it's very appropriate as our last composition. It feels like I just won the game, and the town is saved, and like the fireworks are playing in the background, and the credits are about to scroll, and everybody's happy. I don't, yeah, like an emotional fanfare overall. And again, it's that sort of triplet sort of feel, that waltz feel, 3/4 kind of waltz overall. It feels very heroic with that lead line. Don't sense danger, and then I like this, like the change in the arpeggiator or the arpeggio as it sweeps up and down, follows right along very nicely with that lead line. Telling all your friends you just beat the game, you saw the ending, and how cool it was, and that piece of music that plays that nobody else heard because they never beat the game. So cool. What Ernest, what sort of inspiration did you have for that piece of music overall? Yeah, I don't have much in the way. If it is sort of modeled after that, where it's like something emotional or winning, or I mean, it could even, well, could even have a tinge of like loss in it or something like, but definitely sort of a emotional. I like that emotional fanfare overall. But yeah, as kind of fulfilling that, I think it works out very nicely. Especially what this kind of types of sounds work very well doing, which is that strong lead line, strong melodic kind of sustained line, and then the arpeggiator sweeps representing the movement of kind of traditional instrumentation. Started out with some old school Nobuo, and then I was humming this melody to my daughter and decided to go with a mix of the two. Awesome. Yep, that's definitely with the arpeggio sweep up and down. Definitely fits the bill overall. All right. So, excellent compositions overall. I think it's always fun to um, sort of imagine what type of game goes right along with it, and kind of we talk about aesthetic, and you see how much these types of compositions are driven by the composition itself and not like the notes, not the production of it, because the sounds are so limited. Hopefully gives you a sense of the possibility of these types of sounds, even though they are such a limited palette of sounds. It still allows you to do just a huge wide variety of stuff. Yeah, nice work overall. I think it gives another kind of a great addition to a portfolio overall, especially considering the types of ideas that we discussed of going from restrictions to no restrictions in the composition, or composing it, dealing with different thematic ideas in the game. So all sorts of different things to consider. Good work overall. Like I mentioned previous in the class, the archive, we'll move into the archive now, and that will discuss the rest of the assignments for this month. Creating the video capture. That should be, once you get everything working in the game, the video capture should be relatively straightforward. And getting everything prepared for the final delivery. So again, if you have any questions for anything throughout the month, please contact me this week. I am going to disappear with all sorts of vacation days over the holidays, so there's another good reason to get in contact with me through this week. I will be checking out some of my emails over the break. But just like you, I definitely want to enjoy the break and use it as a break, so we can come back strong at the beginning of 2019 there. But do reach out. And other than that, well, I will be around on Thursday. But if I don't see you on Thursday, happy holidays. Enjoy the break. All of that fun stuff is coming up. So play some video games. Maybe you get a video game for Christmas or for the holidays or whatever. Play some video games. All that fun stuff. Listen to them with a new critical ear, understanding music and all of that stuff. Yeah, we'll end it there. I'll stick around for a few after class if you have any questions. But other than that, thanks a lot, and I'll see you Thursday. All right, so we have our submissions there. Like I said, the focus of this week is, your final week is to take the information and the projects that you've worked on and put them in the best light to show them off beyond the class and beyond your time at Full Sail, and be able to show the work off that you've done and completed, hopefully to future employers and future clients and whatnot. So as you have been progressing through all of your classes, you certainly should be gathering together as much of your classwork and materials and projects that you've been working on and put it together into a strong demo reel to show that off. And that includes these game projects. They are well and good as grades and as projects for a class, but their real intention is to give you a vehicle to show off your music and to show off your work and be able to demonstrate that off out there as you get started in the industry. So we are going to talk about the best way of showing off your music that is intended to play back in the game is to actually have somebody play the game. The best way of demonstrating your music for a game is to actually demo that game. So you have the game projects, you have the game applications, and you can distribute those as you wish. They are yours. They are free for you, free for educational purposes, free for demo purposes. The only thing is you just you would indicate that you did all of the music and sound, but you don't claim that you created the game. But they are for you to put on a website, put in Dropbox, and send it around to future clients or future employers, and to show off your work. However, there are some limitations, mostly like technical limitations, with demonstrating your game. The first one is it's a Mac game, and so whoever wants to play the game needs to have a Mac computer in order to play it. The games can be put in or made as PC games, but that takes a lot of extra understanding and programming to convert the projects. I mean, it is possible, but mostly you have a Mac application. And so somebody has to have a Mac, and maybe whoever you're sending this off to has a computer, and they can check it out. They have to have a computer powerful enough to play the games. That isn't as much of an issue as it used to be, as people's computers have progressively gotten better over the years and have started with better computers. We really don't have much of an issue running these projects. So then you have another issue of very smart people on the internet won't probably just download some random application and run it on their computer. You would be very smart not to just download random zip files and open them up and play them on your computer. Now, of course, that's not the case with these applications, and they aren't. I mean, there's nothing wrong with them, but just a random link on a website, you're not going to get tons of people just saying, okay, sure, I'm just going to download this unknown application and run it. So you need to have some way of showing off your work. You need to have some way of people being able to see your music working in a game. You could just take like one of your main loop files and put it up on SoundCloud and say, hey, here's a loop that I wrote for a game, and I promise it works in the game. So the best way of showing off your music working in the game is actually having the game to show off. So what we're going to do is we're going to do a video capture of you playing the game with your music and sound effects working. So by this point in the month, you have composed the music for both of these projects, created all the sound effects. We had an opportunity for peer review, and you also got feedback for your submission. You have the opportunity to do any revisions or changes to that composition or those sound effects. Last week you used Wise and used an audio middleware tool to connect your music and your sound effects working in the game. You got it working in the game, you tested it out, you played the game, and you listened to your sound effects and your music, and more than likely found some issues with it. I mean, I guess you could knock it out of the park the first time every single time, but most of the time you get it in the game and there's I don't know, 75, 80% of it's all right, but there's another 20% there that I need to tweak and to change. So you go back to your sounds and you tweak your sounds a little bit. You go back to your music and you mix your files and you bounce everything out again. And you test it, put it back in the game, test it out. And that is a very constant kind of revision or iteration cycle where you compose something, you say, I think this is going to work. You put it in the game, go, man, that kind of works, but I need to do this. Then you go back and you fix it, you put it back in the game, you test it out, and you go around and around. So once you get everything set up in the game, then now you're ready to do this final video capture. It basically proves the process that you have created all the music and sound effects, put it in the game, tested it out, and have something to show for it. So you will be using QuickTime and a program called Loopback in order to capture the video on the screen or the game on the screen. All right, so let me talk about how you will set this up and how this will actually work. So actually I can just do this real quick. When you go on FSO, here's week 4. Here's your final game captures assignment. Notice that it is 0 weighted. That doesn't mean that you don't have to do it. It's just not turned in here. You are going to turn it down here in the final project delivery. So don't just ignore the assignment because it is 0 weighted. But it provides you with all the material. It says you will submit this YouTube link in a separate assignment on FSO. Final game capture. So you'll get a PDF here, and you'll get a PDF here. And the first one just gives you mostly just an overview and delivery instructions. Just kind of a real quick summary of how it all works and how to deliver everything here. But there's a separate PDF that goes slide by slide and goes into a lot more detail. So let me just take a look at this here. You will use QuickTime, which is already installed on your computer, and a program called Loopback in order to capture audio inside of your computer. Loopback is a free application. You can just go to the link here. Well, it's not a free application. It costs $99, but you don't need the $99 version. I don't know, unless you completely love the application and you want to support these people, but really you just need the free download for our purposes. The limitation with the free download is that it lasts for 15 minutes, and you only need to record for a minute or two. So if for some reason the 15 minutes runs out, then you just shut down the program and open it back up, and you got another 15 minutes. But after a while, it starts blasting white noise at you, so make sure if you hear that, that's what's going on there. So you just download the Loopback, and what it is it is a virtual audio cable application for your computer. Meaning, you are going to record the video using QuickTime. You've probably used QuickTime at some point. This is actually QuickTime down here for all my videos. QuickTime is just capture the video from your webcam, or actually in this instance it's going to capture the actual screen, but QuickTime doesn't allow you to do audio from inside of your computer. Actually, here's a better view of it. This is what it looks like when you open up and do the screen recording, and when you hit this down arrow, it doesn't allow you to record from inside of your own computer because of all sorts of nefarious copyright reasons. They don't want you recording everything that's ever been played through your entire computer, but for our purposes, it's your music. You want to record it, so you need to have a way of actually doing that. That's where Loopback comes in. And when you download Loopback and you run it, it looks like this. Here. And it says, hey, click here to create a new virtual device. And when you create a new virtual device, it's actually creating like an audio interface inside of your computer. Just like you take a cable and you go cable out of a guitar into an amp, or just a cable out of one thing into another. This takes a cable, a virtual cable, and goes out of your game into QuickTime. If I look at my audio MIDI setup now, it actually adds an extra interface to run everything through. And when you do that and you go back to QuickTime, oh my goodness. Hello, computer. There it goes. When you come back here and look in here, you should now have a Loopback audio interface. Once you do all of that, the other thing you need to do is come in here and you need to tell it to actually go what application you want to record. And you want it to point to 2D Platformer or Angry Bots, whichever one you're recording. Right here. And when you do that, it shows up here. You will be able to, I don't want to do this right now, but you want to be able to listen through your speakers. You uncheck the mute audio sources so that you can hear everything. And then you go run the game, and you should be able to meter it. Once you play the game, you should see some meters here inside of the screen recording, and you know at that point that it's working. When you get this set up, you might hear it doubled up, like it might monitor back twice. Depends on how you have your audio set up, but it either can be this, it could be could be monitoring through QuickTime, which could be this fader. It could be this setting, monitor through audio through whatever your output is. So double check those just to make sure. The other thing is, if you hear it doubled, it doesn't actually capture doubled. So you can just hit record anyway. You'll monitor it doubled, and then you'll listen. The video will be fine. So just a couple of pointers there. So you'll install Loopback. You'll set up for the screen recording. Like I said, you'll create a new virtual device. You'll select the game application that you want to run. You check the checkboxes. You open up QuickTime. You set up a new screen recording. I showed you this where you click the little arrow and you want to set up to Loopback so that you can record inside of QuickTime. At that point, you should see meters. And you can hit record. Depends on if you have like 2 screens set up. If you're just recording on your one screen, you can either click and drag just a portion of your screen if it's in a window, or you can just click and it will record the entire screen. Depends on how you have it set up. The only thing to watch out for is most of everybody's computers now have Retina displays, and that's like a really super high resolution. And if you do the entire full screen, it might just slow everything down trying to capture all that stuff. It just might be something to watch out for. I got a couple more slides on that. So the best thing to do is run it in a window and just kind of highlight over the window so that it only captures. You don't capture all of your messy desktop and all this extra stuff. You just capture exactly what you want. So it starts the screen capture. You can run like I said, you can run it in a window. If you click this little checkbox, it says it's in a window. If you unclick this checkbox, it says it's not in a window. More than likely, you've played the game up to this point. You probably know how best it is to run. You've probably already set all this stuff, if you even had to mess with it at all. So more than likely, it's just fine. But if things start acting screwy while trying to do the recording, some of these settings can help. So you hit record when you're ready to go, and you start recording and demonstrating the game. The actual content of the video, I leave that very much up to you. It's your demo video. It's what you want to show off and how you want to show it off. What I'm most concerned with, most focused on, is the process. The fact that you have the game, you have the music and sound effects working in the game. That's a huge portion of the project that you're now demonstrating. And you also have QuickTime, and you've got Loopback or something installed. I guess I should also point out, if you already have and you use something like Soundflower or Audio Hijack, those things are identical to Loopback, or at least in our function, for what we need. And so you can use those pieces of software. As long as it doesn't watermark it or do anything weird with the video or audio. If you already have it set up in a certain way, you can use that. But once you've captured this video, you show that you have all of the sound effects and music working in the game, and you can do a video capture. You have the game playing back. You're using QuickTime and something like loopback to capture the audio. And so if later on you have a different project or different sounds, you want to redo this one, you can always just create new video captures to show the work that you've done. Demonstrate all the music and sound design. The other thing to point out is I do not count every single sound effect, meaning that I don't like track that you have triggered every single sound effect in every piece of music, because I know that a lot of it or some of it is left up to chance. You can't always trigger every single music file because it's random. So you're going to get like 3 intros, 3 main loops, and only 2 of the endings will play within about 2 minutes long. We suggest that the videos be around 1 minute to 2 minutes long, which is right here. Oops. Right. Oh, there it is. Video capture should be no longer than 2 minutes. So again, the content is up to you. How you demonstrate it is up to you. I would suggest a big one is don't play the game like you're trying to win the game. Don't just do the video capture just to show off how good you are at playing the game. It's about showing off all of the sounds. One common thing that I'll see especially with 2D platformer is I'll hear the intro and then they'll start playing the game, and for like a minute or two I'll just see them play the game and they'll never die, or they'll just die once at the end and stop the video, and that means I only saw 1 intro and 1 ending. You created 4 other files and never showed anybody. So die a couple of times, jump off the edge, trigger some of those ending cues, try to trigger as many of the sound effects as possible, and just kind of, show it off in its best light overall. Then you stop the screen recording. You save the screen recording, name it your last name, your first name, GCP Week4 2D platformer, whatever or Angry Bots. Do not name it last name, first name. Your name isn't last name, first name. You have a last name. You have a first name. Please, it happens every month. Somebody at some point names something last name, first name. So just watch out for that. And then please, please, please check your screen recording. Watch the video after it's done. This happens. I mean, most people do this, no problem. But for some reason, I will always, every month, I'll get a series of videos that either the audio is just missing or they used the internal microphone on their computer. It played out of their computer speakers and then back into the internal microphone. And if it didn't feed back, then it sounds horrible. It just sounds really thin, and you hear them in the background, like breathing and clicking on their keyboard, and it's really kind of weird. And you hear their dog barking in the background and their family running around or whatever it is. So just watch out for that. Double check the video. Make sure it has the correct content of it. It has the correct thing that you captured. The other thing is don't hit record and record it for 2 minutes the first time, because there's no telling if you got it right the first time. So just hit record for a few seconds, and then stop it and check the recording and make sure you're actually capturing the thing you think you're recording. So you don't have to do it over and over again and waste any time. A couple optional tips. Clear off the desktop. If you are capturing any aspect of the desktop, it's probably best to just make it as clear as possible. I know a lot of folks, we have audio directors and people in different game teams come and talk to our Full Sail student, or come talk to our students, and they'll say often, if we see screenshots or things and it just looks like you have a messy desktop and you posted up a video and it just looks like things are all over the place, it's not probably going to help your cause overall, because a lot of people don't want to work with that. So you can either do a full screen or a high resolution recording. You can do a low resolution recording. If more than likely the video capture is just going to work just fine. Every once in a while, depending on people's computers and whatever they're running or how they have it set up, this might start making your computer chug a little bit, because you got to play the game and do a video capture at the same time. If that is the case, then as long as the audio doesn't stutter or doesn't drop out, if the video kind of gets slow or choppy, that's fine. For the purposes of the video, for the grade and for the assignment, that's fine. Obviously, you want to make as a high quality video as possible. I wouldn't really even consider just focusing on the fact that it's an assignment. Create a proper and a demo video that you can use beyond the class. So if need be, try shrinking down the resolution of the game. Maybe even try shrinking down the resolution of your monitor and your screen. That might help create smoother videos overall. Once you have done the video for both Angry Bots and 2D Platformer, you're going to post them up on YouTube. Just put them up there. You can put it just so that I can view it. You don't have to make it completely public, but don't make it private. Make sure that you post it up and you can share the link and have everybody reference it. So the assignment of the video capture is really getting everything set up. Once it's working, then it's just playing the game and just showing off how your music and sound effects sound in the game. All right, so that is your final video capture. And to then show it off, or then to kind of deliver the final version of everything back here on FSO. The kind of big assignment for this week is your final project delivery. And this is going to be basically, it's a 10-question test, but it's not like a test that you study for because you have all the answers. It's just really a summary of your composition. So it's broken down into two halves. 5 of the questions are for 2D Platformer, 5 of the questions for Angry Bots. They're very similar to each other. The first one is 2D Platformer video capture. Provide the YouTube link to your 2D Platformer game capture video. So you just did the video capture, you uploaded it to YouTube, now post the YouTube link here. Make sure that it works. You can always go into incognito mode to check links. That's how I do a lot of my stuff with YouTube and Google, since I have like a personal login for YouTube and Google, but whenever I want to do any Full Sail stuff, you just go into incognito mode and it forgets who you are, and then you can log in as whatever you want. So if you just double check all the links that you're going to send me, make sure that they work. You can use incognito mode to do that, or send them to somebody else, and then that's how I will be able to check it also. So give me a YouTube link. This is actually quite important. A missing YouTube link or a missing audio track in a video renders the submission ungradable. If I can't hear it, if I can't hear your music and your sound effects, or the video doesn't work, or the link doesn't work, I can't grade the rest of the assignment. So make sure the video is there and working. Then you'll send me a screenshot of your DAW session. You will, this is the 2D Platformer instrumentation. List the instruments that you used in the intros, main loop, and ending cues. Name any synths or sample library sources for all the tracks. So you will tell me what instruments you used. Tell me in the intros, the main loops, and the endings, which synths, which drums. Don't just tell me I used a piano and I used a banjo and an organ and a synthesizer. Tell me which presets, which sample libraries, which synthesizers you used, which presets you used, so that the idea is if somebody else had to recreate this session, they knew what instruments. They could go load up those, assuming that they had the same instrumentation that you did. Somebody could kind of recreate all of this stuff if necessary. Next, 2D Platformer transitions. you will take screenshots of your intros, your main loops, and your endings, and then line them up in a particular way. You are going to take your intro 1 and connect it to main loop 2, and then connect it to ending 3. And then take intro 2 and connect it to main loop 3, and then go to ending 1. And then take intro 3 and go to main loop 1, and go to ending 2. I guess I could just read it up here. Basically, it's taking all of your tracks and rearranging them into different orders, taking a screenshot of it, and then answering a few questions, like describe what you listen to each track. How does the music transition from one cue to the next? Describe what you hear. Does the intensity of the music build with the intro cue? Are the same instruments heard from the intros through the main loops and the endings? Are there any hiccups or pops as the music shifts from one music cue to the next? So these are just basic overview. How well did it work? Did it sound as you expected? Just kind of give me insight into the final product. Then you will create a screenshot of your final mix. Give me a peak level and an RMS level. Use the level meter plugin found in Logic, just so I can get an overview of your levels. AngryBots section is very much very similar. AngryBots video capture. Provide the YouTube link for that. Give me a screenshot of your AngryBots session. And list the instrumentation used in your ambient, buzzer action, mech action, and spider action cues. Then you'll take your 4 files, line them all up together, ambient, buzzer action, mech action, spider action, and then basically comment the same way. How did it work? Listen to your cues playing back together. Describe what you hear. How well did the cues play back? Are there any noticeable issues? Do the cues start and end at the same time? Are there any rhythms that clash? Do the melodies or harmonies clash? Just to get an overview of how well the main portion of the composition worked. Give me a summary with a screenshot of your AngryBots mix. So really, it's just kind of like a post-mortem overview, summary, summation of how well everything worked in the final projects. So that is the direction we are headed in this last week. Please let me know if you have any questions. I'm going to stick around here for a few minutes if you have any questions. But again, this is the last week. Let me know if you are having any challenges or anything that you need to discuss in the final part of the week. But we have one more class on Thursday. We can listen to or discuss any or anything that you need, or take a look at your final video. But other than that, let's end it there. Thank you very much, and I'll see you again on Thursday.